Police interrogate black woman over plane access. Turns out she's the aircraft's designer. A shimmering tarmac under the afternoon sun, the roar of jet engines in the distance. Who could have guessed that this day would unravel into a public spectacle? No one would soon forget. Amelia Johnson, a brilliant black aerospace engineer, finds herself cornered by local police outside a private hangar. She's questioned relentlessly, suspicions swirling like the hot summer wind whipping across the airport. But this isn't just any intrusion. These officers believe they've caught an intruder attempting to tamper with an aircraft, when in truth, Amelia's DNA practically runs through every rivet of the plane. She's its chief designer, and soon the whole world will know. Amelia Johnson woke to the melodic chime of her phone alarm. Before her mind drifted into the day's tasks, she lingered on the memory of her grandmother's voice, telling her to always keep her shoulders straight and head held high, advice that had propelled Amelia through academic trials, corporate culture shocks, and the everyday prejudice she faced as a trailblazing black engineer in an industry still grappling with inclusion. She breathed in deeply, summoned her courage, and prepared for a day that promised to be monumental. At 31, Amelia was no ordinary engineer. Her name had quietly begun to circulate in scientific journals and aerospace communities as an innovative thinker behind advanced jet propulsion systems. She held multiple patents and had spearheaded the design of a new type of commercial aircraft that promised quieter engines and reduced fuel consumption. This new craft was being developed in partnership with Lockheed Martin, but the wings of her ambition had soared even higher. She'd contributed research that NASA had studied in its exploration of next-generation flight technologies. Yet, for all her achievements, Amelia remained largely unknown to the public. She wasn't worried about fame. She wanted only to solve problems and make the skies safer, cleaner, and more efficient. That morning, she was set to finalize the inspection of a cutting-edge prototype. Officially named the Lockheed Martin Horizon X, the plane was being stored at a smaller municipal airport near the outskirts of Atlanta. While most of the design aspects were hush-hush, the highlight was a newly engineered fuselage that offered improved aerodynamics and reduced drag. Amelia, having tested and retested every specification, was itching to put her hands on the final product. She dressed in her casual engineering attire, dark slacks, comfortable shoes, and a collared polo embroidered with the Lockheed Martin logo. Her ID badge dangled around her neck, though it wouldn't be visible from a distance. She drove her modest electric car to the airport, excited to see her baby in its near-finished form. Little did she know, that very unassuming approach would set the stage for a confrontation that would change her life forever. The sun beamed mercilessly as Amelia pulled up to the restricted area. She spotted the prototype shining in the sun, an opalescent sheen over the reinforced composite materials. Unlike traditional jets, the new Horizon X boasted a sleeker nose cone and elegantly curved wingtips designed to optimize airflow. Amelia noticed every detail, from the subtle angles of the wing flaps to the way the landing gear seamlessly folded into the fuselage. Her heart thrummed with pride. She parked in a spot not far from the hangar, stepping out with her ID in hand. The tarmac was mostly deserted except for a few other engineers and technicians. Amelia noticed that the airport's security personnel, who usually recognized her, were nowhere in sight. This airport was smaller and had limited staff on weekends, so she assumed they might be checking some other corner of the grounds. As she made her way toward the prototype, Amelia's phone buzzed. It was her supervisor, Martin Delgado. "Hey, Martin," she answered cheerfully. "How's it looking out there?" he asked, voice crackling with static. "Any issues with the aerodynamics we noticed in last week's simulation?" "Still need to check in person," Amelia replied, scanning the horizon. "But the modifications we made to the wing curvature should reduce the drag coefficient by at least another 3%. Perfect." Let me know if you spot anything we missed." She pocketed her phone and trotted across the asphalt to the plane, mind abuzz with possibilities. Everything from the cabin layout to the engine's thrust vector system had been revised countless times under her watchful eye. Now, the real marvel was seeing it in physical form, no longer lines on a blueprint or wireframes on a computer screen. That's when she heard it. The sound of a car engine revving, a whoop of a siren. She turned to see a black and white police cruiser speeding across the tarmac, dust swirling in its wake. Another cruiser followed close behind. Confusion clashed with a spike of alarm inside her. She glanced around, wondering what emergency had brought them here, perhaps a trespasser or stolen airport property. Quickly, her thoughts pivoted. She recognized the posture of suspicion in the officers' eyes as they parked and threw open their doors. Officers Dunn and Matthews stepped out, scanning the area like hawks. Their eyes landed on Amelia. "Excuse me, ma'am," Officer Dunn called, resting a hand on the top of his holster. "Mind telling us what you're doing here?" Amelia held up her ID badge, the Lockheed Martin logo prominently displayed. "I'm Amelia Johnson, the lead designer for this prototype. I have credentials to be here." Her voice was calm, measured she'd faced skepticism before and knew how to handle it with professional composure. Officer Matthews narrowed his eyes, taking in Amelia's badge as though he was scanning it for forgeries. "Mind telling us exactly what you're working on?" Her tone stayed respectful. "It's an experimental aircraft. I'm here for an inspection. You can check with airport security or call Lockheed Martin for verification." The officers exchanged glances. Dunn grabbed the badge to inspect it more closely. Amelia noticed a flurry of shifting expressions, doubt, suspicion, and something else less definable but distinctly familiar. Having grown up in a world where people often judged her intelligence or her very presence based on her skin color, Amelia recognized the subtext. She hoped logic would prevail. The badge was real, she was where she belonged, and the entire project was under official approval. Yet she felt a tremor in her gut, a warning that things were about to take an unpleasant turn. Dunn spoke into his radio. "Dispatch, we have a possible unauthorized individual claiming she's an employee. Name is Amelia Johnson, requesting verification." Amelia's heart thudded. Although she had the right to be here, she knew that any administrative glitch or slow verification from the offices might complicate things. She decided to be proactive. "Look," she said, lifting her phone, "I can call my supervisor, Martin Delgado, or even the airport manager. They'll clear this up immediately." Matthews cast a wary glance at her phone. "Ma'am, we didn't say you could make a call." His tone was stern. She felt her hackles rise. Still, she attempted to remain civil. "I was just trying to help you verify my identity." "Sure you were," Matthews grunted. Officer Dunn returned the ID badge and folded his arms across his chest. "We got a call about suspicious activity by a private aircraft. You fit the description." Amelia's mind raced. What was the description? "Black woman in dark pants and a collared shirt," Matthews said, almost dismissively. Her jaw tightened. It was a painfully generic description, but she recognized the underlying bias. "And you think just because I'm here, near this plane, I'm doing something illegal?" Dunn exhaled, stepping closer. "A private citizen saw you approaching the plane and thought you were tampering with it. It's our job to check. We need you to cooperate." She suppressed a flash of anger, focusing instead on the relentless logic she lived by. "I'm cooperating," she said calmly. "And it's not just some plane, it's the Lockheed Martin Horizon X. It's a prototype that I helped design. Check the name in the system if you need more proof." Dunn looked skeptical. "Let's see your bag." Amelia stiffened. She carried a small toolkit and her laptop. Standard gear for an engineer. But the insinuation that she might be carrying something malicious grated on her nerves. "Fine," she said. dropping to one knee and unzipping her backpack to show them the compartments. Laptop, engineering notebooks, calibration tools. Matthews leaned in, carefully inspecting each item. Amelia's professional notes, sketches, and data logs seemed suspicious in his eyes. "You've got a lot of schematics here," he observed, flipping through her printed notes. "You could have stolen these." Something snapped in Amelia, a frustration that no rational explanation seemed to ease. "I didn't steal them. I created them. My name and signature are on every blueprint if you care to look." The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. The afternoon sun bore down on them, heightening Amelia's perspiration and the swirl of dust around their feet. The hum of a passing plane only underscored the surreal nature of the scene. Here she was, an expert in her field, forced to prove she had the right to stand next to her own creation. Unknown to the officers or Amelia, an airport ground technician named Roger Hidalgo watched the confrontation from a distance. He had met Amelia briefly the previous week during a routine check of the runway lights, and she'd casually mentioned being part of the Lockheed Martin project. At the time, Roger had been fascinated that someone so young and unassuming, especially a black woman, in a field where he rarely encountered anyone but older white men, could be so integral to a major aerospace project. He had found her inspiring. Now, seeing her cornered by two officers who clearly doubted her credentials, Roger wanted to intervene. He hesitated, partly out of fear that his words might escalate the situation. Still, he couldn't stand idly by. He hustled over, raising his hands in a show of goodwill. "Officers," he began, slightly out of breath. "I know her. Miss Johnson is with Lockheed Martin. She has every right to be here." Both officers turned, their stance unyielding. Amelia recognized Roger and exhaled a small sigh of relief. "Who are you?" Dunn demanded. "I'm Roger, a ground technician here. I've seen her before." "She's not trespassing, she's the engineer in charge of this plane." Matthews huffed as if personally offended. "We still need official verification. You could be covering for her." Roger bristled, but Amelia shot him a look, silently urging him to stay calm. "I can call the airport manager," he offered. "She knows Amelia personally. Please, just let me do that." The officers exchanged exasperated glances before Matthews finally gave a curt nod. "Fine. Make the call." Roger took out his phone and dialed the airport manager, Miss Evelyn Bradley. The phone rang endlessly, each ring piling more tension onto the group. Eventually, it clicked to voicemail. Roger left a message, anxiety creeping into his voice. "Miss Bradley, it's Roger from ground crew. We have a situation with the police and Miss Johnson, the Lockheed Martin engineer. Please call back ASAP." He hung up, turning to the officers. "She's not picking up. She might be in a meeting or away from her desk." Matthews looked at Amelia, eyes cold. "In the meantime, we'd like you to come with us. We can wait at the station until we clear everything up." Amelia's heart sank. Being escorted to a police station as if she were a criminal was demeaning, especially for something so simple to verify. "Officers, that's really not necessary," she argued. "I can call my supervisor, Martin Delgado. He's expecting me to check out the plane." "Here, let me." Dunn put his hand up, place the phone on the ground, step away, her lips parted, shock apparent. She could see them getting more agitated, as though her compliance was in question. Legally, Amelia knew her rights. She wasn't under arrest, and if they had no probable cause, they couldn't force her to go anywhere. But being confrontational might backfire. Already, her heart pounded with the terrifying realization that things could escalate. A single misunderstanding or flinch could turn catastrophic. She complied, setting her phone carefully on the ground. "I'm not resisting, but please, I have the direct line to Lockheed Martin's corporate office." One call, and you'll have all the confirmation you need. Dunn and Matthews shared a look as though silently debating their next move. In the distance, a small crowd began to gather airport staff, a few curious bystanders. Word had spread that something unusual was unfolding near the Lockheed Martin prototype. Some recorded on their phones from a distance, uncertain whether they should intervene or simply observe. Uncomfortable under the growing spotlight, Officer Matthews stepped forward. "Ma'am, we need to make sure you're not a threat to public safety or this airport. If you really are who you say you are, you'll be fine. Now, hands behind your back. We'll move to the station for questioning." Amelia's face blanched with the injustice of it all. She stuttered, "I haven't done anything illegal, and you still haven't let me call my supervisor." Roger interjected, "Wait, you can't just take her in. This is a misunderstanding." Officer Dunn placed a firm hand on Amelia's wrist, guiding it behind her back. A murmur of dismay rippled through the onlookers. Amelia's mind spiraled. This had escalated far beyond a routine check. Now, she was humiliated in front of colleagues and strangers, all for being near the plane she designed. Amelia was gently but firmly led to the back of the police cruiser, her heart hammering, tears of shock burning at the corners of her eyes. She tried to reason with herself. Once they run my name, check my ID, and speak to the right people, everything will be cleared up. But the larger issue gnawed at her. Why had it gone this far? Why hadn't her credentials been enough at the onset? Inside the cruiser, she heard officers talking over the radio, requesting information on Amelia Johnson. The dispatcher's voice crackled. No criminal record found, no warrants, yet the officers didn't release her. Instead, they drove away from the runway, heading off airport grounds to the local station. Though they weren't reading her Miranda rights technically, she wasn't under arrest, they were detaining her. Upon arrival, Amelia was escorted into a barren interrogation room. White walls, a single table, and a harsh fluorescent light overhead. One officer stood guard at the door while the other made phone calls. She only caught snippets. "Yes, verifying her claims. We have documents, but need to confirm. Possibly stolen proprietary info." "Stolen info," she grimaced. Her own design was being interpreted as stolen. The irony was sickening. Time crawled. She watched the clock tick away in nerve-wracking increments. Nearly an hour passed before the door opened again. Officer Dunn walked in, accompanied by a man wearing a crisp suit and a name badge identifying him as Captain Price. He studied Amelia a moment before speaking. "Miss Johnson," he said evenly, "we've been trying to reach your supervisor. No luck. We also tried calling your company's main line. It's the weekend, so we're getting limited responses. Do you have any direct contact with a Lockheed Martin security officer or manager who can confirm your identity?" She gestured helplessly. "My phone. It's in your possession." "All my contacts are in there." Her voice was tight, the tension of being detained in such a humiliating way fueling a quiet fury. Captain Price nodded. "We'll bring you your phone under supervision. You may place your call, but we'll be listening in." Amelia bit her lip, swallowing her indignation. At this point, she was desperate to call Martin Delgado to clear this up. "Thank you," she said softly, struggling to maintain a veneer of courtesy. Her mind flickered to the thought that if Martin didn't pick up, she'd be stuck in this limbo even longer. Meanwhile, outside the station, word had reached corporate channels at Lockheed Martin that something was amiss. Martin Delgado had gotten a frantic voice message from Roger Hidalgo, along with a half-dozen text messages. Alarmed, Martin began calling the police station, trying to get through official lines. His calls were bounced around. Eventually, he reached Captain Price, who confirmed that Amelia was being held for questioning. Martin's voice boomed with indignation. "She's the lead engineer on that prototype. The entire design is based on her work. Detaining her for checking on her own plane is ludicrous. Captain Price remained guarded. We had reports of suspicious activity, and Miss Johnson didn't have immediate on-site verification. We needed to follow protocol. She is the verification, Martin nearly shouted. You have no idea the kind of meltdown you're risking. This is a Lockheed Martin project worth millions, not to mention the negative press you're about to generate. Let her go right now. Price hesitated. He had certainly heard the name Lockheed Martin, but only now did the gravity of the potential scandal dawn on him. The conversation ended politely, but with an unmistakable urgency. Martin was on his way. He wasn't coming alone. He had also contacted Lockheed Martin's legal team, along with higher-ups who were outraged by the disrespect shown to a key employee. Inside the interrogation room, the door opened once again. This time, Captain Price stepped in alone. His demeanor was markedly different, uneasy, even contrite. He cleared his throat. Miss Johnson, we've finally received confirmation from Lockheed Martin. You're free to go. Relief surged through her, but it was laced with anger and humiliation. Amelia fixed him with a level stare. I'd like my belongings back. He handed over her phone and motioned for one of the officers to retrieve her other items. I apologize for the inconvenience, Price began carefully. We were only following procedure. Amelia's fury simmered. She didn't trust herself to speak freely. Too many emotions, rage, betrayal, exhaustion, threatened to boil over. She snatched her phone, jacket, and ID from the officer who'd entered, and marched out of the room without another word. Dunn and Matthews, the ones who had first confronted her, stood by the hallway. Dunn muttered something that sounded like a half-hearted apology, but Amelia strode past him. She could feel tears burning at the back of her eyes, tears she wouldn't let them see. By the time Amelia stepped outside, she saw Martin Delgado and Lockheed Martin's head of security, Althea Brown, rushing toward her. Martin enveloped her in a quick hug, completely uncharacteristic for her usually stoic supervisor. Are you okay? He asked urgently. She nodded stiffly, blinking back tears. I'm fine, just rattled. Althea Brown, tall and imposing, wasted no time. We're filing a formal complaint, she declared, eyeing the station's entrance as if she wanted a piece of them. This is unacceptable. At the mention of legal action, Amelia stiffened. She'd never been the litigious type, but the memory of being handcuffed and humiliated lingered. I just want to make sure this never happens again to me or anyone else. We'll see that it doesn't, Althea promised, pressing her phone to her ear and launching into a conversation with Lockheed Martin's legal counsel. Martin guided Amelia to his car. Let's get you out of here. Do you need medical attention? I just need some fresh air, Amelia whispered. She cast one last glance at the police station, an edifice of authority that she had always respected. Yet that respect was tarnished now. The system that was supposed to protect her had turned on her, fueled by prejudice and baseless suspicion. Over the next few days, the story of Amelia's ordeal spread like wildfire within Lockheed Martin. Colleagues expressed outrage. Executives offered silent support, sending well wishes or subtle gestures of solidarity. Some insisted that the company hold a press conference condemning the racial profiling of one of their top engineers. Meanwhile, local media caught wind of the incident. A small Atlanta newspaper ran a piece titled, "Police Detain Black Female Engineer at Airport Project Partner Confirms. She's the designer." The story circulated on social media, sparking both fury and heated debate. Comments ranged from supportive to dismissive, some claiming that Amelia should have known better than to appear suspicious. Others recognized the blatant discrimination. Amelia felt torn. On one hand, she loathed being the center of public attention, especially for something so humiliating. On the other, she saw how important it was for people to know this could happen to anyone no matter their credentials. The local police department began to feel the heat. Captain Price found himself fielding phone calls, not just from the press, but from city officials who wanted answers. Council members questioned the department's training protocols, particularly regarding implicit bias. The storyline threatened the department's reputation, especially because it pointed to a broader issue of racial profiling. Officers Dunn and Matthews became scapegoats among colleagues who wanted to distance themselves from the PR nightmare. Dunn, a father of two who believed he'd merely been doing his job, found himself on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. Matthews, more stubborn, insisted they'd acted with cause. But as the story gained traction, both realized they were entangled in a controversy far bigger than they'd anticipated. Karma was rolling in like a tidal wave, propelled by outraged voices across social media platforms. The hashtag Amelia Johnson began trending locally with calls to hold the department accountable. People shared the story as an example of how systemic bias could impact even the most accomplished individuals. Journalists camped outside Lockheed Martin's local offices, hoping to get a statement from Amelia. She initially refused interviews, overwhelmed by the psychological toll of the ordeal. She just wanted to return to her research, focusing on the next stage of the Horizon X project. But the avalanche of attention couldn't be ignored indefinitely. Her phone buzzed with an incoming call from Natalie Pierce, a well-known journalist with CNN. Natalie had a reputation for reporting on racial justice and social issues with nuance and empathy. At first, Amelia let it go to voicemail, but after some reflection, she realized that her silence might inadvertently allow the narrative to be twisted by those who doubted her story. At the urging of Martin Delgado and Althea Brown, Amelia agreed to a sit-down interview with Natalie. The network was given a chance to film inside a test hangar at Lockheed Martin's facility, showcasing the prototype. Amelia hoped the visual element would drive home the fact that she was indeed the lead designer. Camera crews bustled under the bright hangar lights, capturing sleek footage of the Horizon X. Amelia stood near the plane's nose, wearing her Lockheed Martin polo and a resolute expression. Natalie Pierce, professionally poised, greeted Amelia with a soft handshake. "Thank you for talking to us," Natalie said. "I know this isn't an easy time." Amelia offered a polite nod. "I appreciate the chance to clarify what happened." As the cameras rolled, Natalie started with basic questions about Amelia's background, her education at Georgia Tech, her early fascination with flight, and how she rose through the ranks at Lockheed Martin. Amelia spoke with passion about the plane's innovative design, the many hours of testing, and her team's dedication. Then Natalie steered the conversation to the airport incident. Amelia's face tightened. Still, she pressed on, recounting how the police approached her, how she showed her ID, and how they escalated the situation despite her cooperation. "Do you believe you were racially profiled?" Natalie asked bluntly. "Yes," Amelia answered without hesitation. "I've been questioned in other parts of my life, but never so publicly or aggressively. My ID and credentials should have been enough. I can't ignore that my race played a role in how they perceived me." The cameras zoomed in, capturing every nuance of her expression. "What would you like to see happen now?" Natalie pressed. Amelia took a breath. "I'd like the police department to acknowledge what happened and implement better training so it doesn't happen again. And honestly, I'd like some kind of apology. Not just for me, but for all those who've had similar experiences without the backing of a corporation or the media to defend them." Those words rang through the hangar, echoing off the steel beams and the silent plane and aircraft that represented progress and innovation, now overshadowed by a scenario that illustrated the timeless struggle for equality. The interview ignited further public outcry, forcing the city's mayor and the police chief to address the matter. Under mounting pressure, Captain Price held a press conference. Standing behind a podium, flanked by American flags, he read a carefully worded statement. "We acknowledge the incident involving Miss Amelia Johnson and regret the distress she experienced. While our officers responded in good faith to a call reporting suspicious activity, we have launched a full internal review. We are also undertaking additional training to ensure all citizens are treated fairly and respectfully. We apologize to Miss Johnson for the misunderstanding. The statement rang hollow to some, but it was a semblance of accountability." City Council members then ordered comprehensive bias training for all officers, part of a broader directive to review how such calls were handled. Meanwhile, social media exploded with commentary. Some praised Amelia for her courage, while others denied any racial element existed. Still, the general consensus within the local community was that the incident highlighted a larger problem. Amelia felt both vindicated and exhausted. An apology was a step forward, but no public statement could erase the humiliation of being handcuffed on a tarmac next to her own engineering triumph. The emotional scars lingered. Within Lockheed Martin, Amelia's standing soared. The corporate leadership extended offers for her to speak at diversity and inclusion events or represent the company at industry conferences. Donations to organizations promoting minorities in STEM fields spiked in her name. Yet, Amelia noticed an odd ambivalence from some co-workers, people who quietly resented the publicity. A few believed she had stirred trouble and put a spotlight on their division at an inconvenient time. Others worried that negative associations might impact future funding or overshadow the project's achievements. Amelia sensed this tension in hushed hallway conversations and awkward silences whenever she entered the room. Even so, her direct team rallied around her, determined to keep the Horizon X project on schedule. They respected her as an engineer, not just as a figure in a social controversy. This solidarity empowered Amelia to refocus on her work, forging ahead with final tests for the plane's unveiling. 2 months later, Lockheed Martin prepared a grand unveiling of the Horizon X at a major aviation expo in Dallas. 6 journalists, potential buyers, and curious industry experts gathered to catch a glimpse of the future of commercial aviation. Martin Delgado insisted that Amelia be the keynote speaker, symbolizing both the company's faith in her expertise and a statement against the incident that had made headlines. As Amelia took the stage before hundreds of attendees, she felt a swell of pride tempered by lingering anxiety. The image of police cruisers on the tarmac sometimes still invaded her dreams. But now, under the gleaming expo lights, she stood strong. She delivered a riveting presentation detailing the Horizon X's revolutionary design, an ultra-light fuselage material that reduced aircraft weight by 15%, cutting-edge engines that cut fuel consumption by a quarter, and an innovative interior layout that enhanced passenger comfort. Applause thundered through the auditorium. After the presentation, a Boeing representative approached her, full of praise. "We followed some of your research, Miss Johnson. It's a pleasure to finally meet you." She recognized the brand name instantly. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner had once been her source of inspiration as a budding engineer. Now, the roles were reversed. She was the one forging new paths in aerospace design. It was a triumphant moment, yet a pang of bittersweet reflection tugged at her. How easily it had been for some to ignore her achievements just weeks earlier, but today the world saw her brilliance unfiltered, undeniable. While Amelia soared in her career, the ripples of karma reached those who had wronged her. Officers Dunn and Matthews underwent an internal review. Their superiors decided that while the initial approach to Amelia might have been within protocol, responding to a call, the Escalation, and refusal to verify her credentials in a timely manner showed poor judgment. Both men faced disciplinary action, including mandatory retraining. Dunn accepted the outcome with a semblance of regret, though he privately insisted he hadn't meant any harm. Matthews, however, resisted the training, feeling scapegoated by the public outcry. Eventually, he resigned under growing pressure, leaving behind a tainted record. Captain Price also faced consequences. Though he kept his position, the public scrutiny forced him to adopt sweeping changes in how his department handled calls of suspicious persons. He became an unlikely champion of more thorough, bias-free procedures, if only to salvage the department's reputation. City officials monitored the reforms closely, spurred by the wave of public support for Amelia. Back in the labs and hangars of Lockheed Martin, Amelia's focus honed in on the next challenge, finalizing the plane for the test flight. The day came when the Horizon X was rolled onto the runway, pilot at the ready. Amelia observed from the control tower, her heart pounding with a cocktail of nerves and elation. The engines whirred quietly thanks to her proprietary noise reduction design, and soon the plane lifted gently off the runway, ascending into clear, blue skies. Inside the tower, the tension was palpable as the plane performed its initial maneuvers. Data lit up on screens, metrics verifying each design feature in real time. The flight was as smooth as Amelia had dared hope. Applause erupted among the engineers when the prototype landed safely, surpassing expectations for performance and stability. Amelia sank into a chair, relief and triumph washing over her. It felt as though the plane's success vindicated every moment of doubt, every moment of profiling, every moment of frustration. The Horizon X soared, and so did she. Following the successful test flight, Amelia fielded a barrage of interview requests. The media wanted to celebrate the plane's success and retell the story of how its designer had been temporarily mistaken for a criminal. She obliged a few interviews, carefully steering the narrative toward the engineering triumph rather than the humiliations she had endured. Still, the question of race and bias lingered in every conversation. One journalist asked, "If you had to choose between the plane's success or the social change your story sparked, which would you choose?" Amelia paused before answering. "I want both. Progress in technology and society aren't mutually exclusive. We can fly higher, literally and metaphorically, if we support each other." Her words resonated, forging a compelling new angle. Amelia Johnson wasn't just an accomplished engineer, she was also a voice calling for fairness and equality. Her story transcended a single incident, evolving into a symbol of resilience and hope for underrepresented communities in STEM. Amelia's personal life hadn't been immune to the fallout. Her parents, who lived in a quiet suburb, had seen their daughter's name splashed across headlines and nightly newscasts. They worried for her safety, texting and calling daily to ensure she was okay. Her mother, a retired school teacher, had wept upon seeing the police cruiser footage. "I thought we were past this," her mother had sobbed into the phone. "I prayed so hard you'd never face what we did in our youth." That conversation had been a stark reminder to Amelia that the fight against racial injustice was generational, an unbroken chain from her grandmother's advice to her present-day realities. But for every moment of heartbreak, there was also a swelling pride that Amelia had seized the chance to turn her ordeal into something larger than herself. Despite the plane's success and the public apologies, Amelia couldn't shake a lingering sense of unfinished business. She had become a reluctant figurehead, receiving messages from young black students who saw her as a role model. Some wrote that they dreamed of designing planes, rockets, or spaceships, but worried about the barriers they'd face. Moved by their stories, Amelia resolved to create pathways for those who'd follow in her footsteps. She began partnering with organizations like the National Society of Black Engineers, NSBE, hosting workshops, offering mentorship, and campaigning for scholarships. Her relationship with Lockheed Martin changed, too. The higher-ups recognized the public relations boon her story had become, but they also saw in her a leader who could shape future recruitment and retention of minority talent. Amelia agreed to take on a dual role, continuing her engineering work while spearheading inclusion initiatives within the company. She insisted, however, that no matter how many committees or conferences she attended, her first love would remain the lab, where she could keep pushing the boundaries of aviation design. Months later, Amelia found herself back on a different tarmac, this time in Seattle, for a collaboration with Boeing. She stood near a row of parked test planes, each representing cutting-edge technology. She had come a long way from that humiliating day in Atlanta. A moment of déjà vu flickered as she walked across the runway, laptop bag in hand. She glanced around, half expecting to see police cruisers bearing down on her, but none came. Instead, a Boeing engineer jogged up to her with an outstretched hand. "Miss Johnson, so glad you could make it. We can't wait to hear your feedback on our new concept plane." She nodded warmly. "I'm excited to see what you've got." They strolled away, discussing advanced engine materials and sustainable fuels, a conversation untinged by suspicion or prejudice. Amelia realized then that while one day's painful experience wouldn't dismantle the entire structure of bias, it had sparked changes within her local police department, within Lockheed Martin, and even within her. She would always carry that memory, but she no longer let it define her. The following year swirled by in a blur of late-night flights and crowded auditoriums. As Amelia Johnson found herself in unprecedented demand, she received speaking invitations from universities, aerospace conferences, and technology summits around the globe. Always a quiet achiever at heart, Amelia was both humbled and overwhelmed by the magnitude of the attention. Yet she knew this was her opportunity to shape the conversation around innovation and inclusivity, two values she believed would propel society forward. On one particularly memorable trip to Europe, she visited Airbus in Toulouse, where she joined a panel on next-generation aircraft design. Sitting beside industry veterans decades older, she eloquently explained the intricacies of composite materials and fuel optimization, peppering her technical expertise with stories of how her early childhood fascination with flight had sparked her life's work. After the session, a group of young international interns clustered around her, eyes wide, eager to learn. In their curiosity, Amelia saw her younger self hungry for guidance, yet uncertain where to find it. It was moments like these that reinforced her decision to create something tangible for the next generation. Toward that end, she dedicated herself to an ambitious personal project, the Ella Johnson Scholarship Fund, named for her late grandmother, the woman who had once told her never to slump her shoulders in the face of doubt. The scholarship targeted underrepresented high school seniors with a passion for science, technology, engineering, or math. More than just a one-time check, recipients were paired with seasoned engineers, sometimes from Lockheed Martin, other times from NASA or Boeing, who provided real-world exposure to aerospace labs and test facilities. From day one, the scholarship was met with an outpouring of support. Amelia's colleagues at Lockheed Martin offered donations and volunteered to mentor. Her NASA contacts also pitched in, inviting scholarship winners to visit research centers where cutting-edge work on supersonic flight and low-boom aircraft was being developed. Amelia herself oversaw the mentorship matches, ensuring each student was paired with someone who could ignite their imagination. Over time, the program became a model for how to blend financial support with immersive mentorship experiences. As part of her NASA collaborations, Amelia contributed research to ongoing efforts aimed at quiet, supersonic travel. She brought her experience from the Horizon X project to NASA's X 59 quiet supersonic technology aircraft, focusing on noise reduction strategies that could revolutionize air travel worldwide. The idea that planes might someday zip across oceans at astonishing speeds without the disruptive sonic booms thrilled Amelia just another example of how imagination, when backed by science, could reshape reality. Whenever she talked about her dual roles revolutionizing aircraft design while building scholarship opportunities, people often asked how she managed both with the same relentless energy. To her, there was no real distinction. Elevating the underrepresented in STEM isn't separate from the work of innovating in aerospace. She'd say in interviews, one fuels the other. Fresh perspectives lead to new breakthroughs, and she believed it wholeheartedly. Her own perseverance never felt more validated than when she witnessed the scholarship's first cohort graduate high school. Each scholar stood at the threshold of a bright future, some heading to prestigious universities on a full ride, others enrolling directly in hands-on technical programs. One young woman from rural Georgia wrote Amelia a heartfelt note. "Before your scholarship, I didn't think an aerospace career was even an option. Now, I'm going for it just like you did." Reading those words brought tears to Amelia's eyes. It was a stark reminder that her personal ordeal on the tarmac, humiliating though it had been, had set a chain of transformative events into motion. Still, even as accolades flooded in, Amelia kept her eyes on the horizon. The scholarship fund grew each year, more donors came aboard, and more students found a path into fields once deemed out of reach. News outlets hailed Amelia as a trailblazer, both for her designs and for her advocacy. Yet she insisted on remaining approachable, never forgetting her own humble beginnings. At meet and greet events, she'd take the time to talk one-on-one with aspiring engineers, sign copies of her technical papers, and swap stories of late-night tinkering sessions with other like-minded dreamers. And so, Amelia's legacy took shape, not just in the blueprints for advanced aircraft or in the NASA labs that bore her imprint, but in the minds of hundreds of young people who saw her as living proof that resilience, creativity, and community support could outpace the gravity of any obstacle. Each time a student soared taking their first flight lesson, entering a science fair, or presenting a breakthrough experiment, Amelia felt that familiar glow of vindication. She had turned a moment of deep injustice into a bright future for many, forging a world where fewer bright minds would be held back by suspicion, and more dreams would take flight toward the endless sky. A year after the public uproar and subsequent reforms, Amelia Johnson found herself in an ornate hearing room on Capitol Hill, a place she never imagined she'd be. Polished wood panels and rows of attentive onlookers set the stage for her testimony before a congressional panel on improving STEM education. Across from her sat senators, representatives, and policymakers from various states, each poised with questions and agendas. A gentle hum of cameras and whispered speculation hung in the air. When it was Amelia's turn to speak, she rose, heart pounding. She remembered her grandmother's words, "Stand tall, head high, and let them guide her." Her story began simply, recounting her upbringing in a modest southern community. She spoke of the challenges she faced as a black girl fascinated with flight and engineering, the raised eyebrows from teachers who doubted her, the difficulty of obtaining advanced study materials, and the grit it took to earn a scholarship to Georgia Tech. Every detail painted a picture of the enormous potential that exists in communities often overlooked. Her tone shifted as she detailed how she rose to become the lead designer on Lockheed Martin's Horizon X project. Here she used real data and personal anecdotes to illustrate the importance of nurturing scientific curiosity from a young age. She advocated for increased federal funding for STEM programs, especially in under-resourced schools. She talked about bridging the gap between academic theory and real-world application, urging Congress to incentivize partnerships between universities and companies like Lockheed Martin. Amelia also stressed the need for mentorship programs. When a child sees someone who looks like them working as an engineer, it changes what they believe is possible, she said. Throughout her testimony, the congressional panel sat rapt. Even the members known for pushing back on new funding initiatives found it difficult to argue against Amelia's lived experience. Some flipped through her data charts, nodding in recognition of the success stories that could emerge if more resources were provided. Others scribbled notes, clearly moved by the intersection of her personal struggle with the national need for more skilled professionals in aerospace, biomedical research, and clean energy. After the hearing concluded, several representatives approached her with sincere thanks. One congresswoman from Texas, herself a former high school math teacher, wiped away a tear. "Your story resonates with so many of our young folks," she confided. "We need more voices like yours in these chambers." Later that evening, Amelia returned to her hotel room to find a large manila envelope waiting for her. It was postmarked from Atlanta, stamped with the mayor's official seal. She opened it to discover a letter praising her for not only shining a spotlight on the city's need for better community police relations, but also for the strides she had taken to advance STEM opportunities for underrepresented youth. Mayor Williams wrote that the new police training had already begun to transform how officers approached calls involving suspicious persons, and that community partnerships were fostering renewed trust. Amelia read the letter twice, her eyes lingering on the paragraph that detailed the decrease in citizen complaints against the department. She thought back to her own experience, the indignity, the rage, and the sense of disbelief that had gripped her when handcuffs encircled her wrists. Now, seeing evidence that these hardships had sparked real change felt like a balm on an old wound. She placed the letter on her nightstand, recognizing it as part of her ongoing journey, a reminder that progress often begins with a painful spark. In a quiet moment of reflection, she realized she'd become a bridge between worlds. A woman who designed cutting-edge aircraft, yet stood for social justice in public forums. Her life had taken on a scope she never predicted, but she welcomed the challenge. For every young mind that would benefit from new scholarship programs, for every future engineer who might walk into a hangar without suspicion, and for every policy change that made the world just a little bit fairer, Amelia felt her story was worth telling. Before she turned out the lights, Amelia placed the mayor's letter in a folder, along with other documents chronicling her recent triumphs and trials. She labeled it carefully, evidence of hope. The next morning, she would travel to another conference where she'd present new data on quiet supersonic flight, proof that science and society could advance in tandem when given the right care and attention. And although the scars from her ordeal would forever mark her, she found reassurance in the tangible progress unfolding before her eyes, rippling outward to touch lives far beyond her own. On an early morning a few weeks later, Amelia returned to the same Atlanta airport. This time, the Horizon X had become a success story, with orders from multiple airlines. A new iteration was being tested, one that incorporated even more advanced features. Amelia arrived unannounced, strolling across the tarmac just as she had that fateful day. A security guard recognized her instantly and waved. "Morning, Miss Johnson." "Morning," she replied, smiling. She held her ID badge, but he didn't even ask to see it. He already knew who she was. Her reputation preceded her now. She approached the plane, running her fingertips along its sleek fuselage. Pride flooded her senses. She glanced back, remembering how everything had once gone so horribly wrong in this very place. Yet now she stood taller, more certain of herself and her mission than ever. The plane's surface reflected her silhouette, a woman who had faced prejudice and turned it into progress. who had been challenged by the very system meant to protect her, and who had responded not with defeat, but with determination. A sense of poetic justice enveloped her. She wasn't just an engineer, she was a catalyst, an architect of both aerospace innovation and social change. And the world was finally ready to see her as she truly was, a visionary unafraid to defy gravity in every sense. Thank you for joining me on this emotional journey of determination, triumph, and transformation. Amelia Johnson's story reminds us that adversity can strike at any moment, and sometimes the greatest show of resilience is to rise above the narrow perceptions of others and continue to break barriers. If this story inspired you or made you think about our shared responsibility to treat each other with fairness and respect, then let's keep the conversation going. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like it. Your support helps more people find this empowering story. Share it with friends, family, and anyone who needs a reminder that perseverance can conquer even the highest hurdles. And subscribe to this channel for more stories that illuminate both the wonder of scientific progress and the unyielding human spirit. Let's continue exploring together, and let's keep reaching for the skies, one dream at a time.